Good evening, everyone. Welcome again to Tuesday Talks with the Movement for Social Justice. All the best for 2022. And we are kicking off 2022 with a call for action. And we have with us tonight our political leader, David Abdullah, who is going to tell us a little bit about what this call to action is. Good evening, David. Welcome.
Good evening, Fabiola. I don't know if I should say Happy New Year, but let me just say best wishes to you for the new year. Hope that you have achieve all the things that you want to achieve in 2022.
Thank you.
This Happy New Year thing, given all that is happening with COVID, is so difficult to say that and have it become reality. And in fact, when I did the New Year's message the other day, I said, a lot of people talk about hope, and to say the New Year is almost like as if there's something magical going to happen at the stroke of midnight, when really it's just moving from 2021, December 31st to 1st of January, 2022. And it's a continuum. And so all the problems that we have had are continuing, and all the challenges and so on. So to all of those who have logged in on Facebook, let me also say a very good evening to you. So the issue of the action campaign. Sorry, yes. On Sunday, when I had a media conference and made a statement, no hope without action, the idea really is that we as citizens have to take action. MSJ has always been about fundamental change, but fundamental change does not happen by wishing it. Fundamental change can only happen when we do things to make it a reality. And so one very simple action that I thought about was to deal with the issue of high and rising food prices. Now, of course, it's impossible to tackle all of the food items which are going up every day, every week, and so on. Mm-hmm. So we thought that we would single out a single item, and that is produced by a single company. So it makes it that much easier for everybody to be part of a focused action campaign. Because sometimes if you try to do too much at one time, it's like a scatter shot, and nothing gets hit in terms of the target. So drawing on the experience that I had as president of Phyton many moons ago, in the early 2000s, we actually had a very successful campaign. Initially, we asked people to boycott the buying of bread for one weekend because the Bakers Association increased the price of bread. But then subsequent to that, KISS unilaterally increased the price of bread again. And the other bakers said, we are not increasing our price. But KISS, which is a big part of a big conglomerate, part of the Bermudez Group, which is a big conglomerate in the country, KISS unilaterally increased the price of bread. So we launched a boycott KISS campaign, which we think had some significant impact. And so last weekend, National Flour Mills announced that they were going to increase the price of flour. And even before the ink was dried on that press release, KISS issued a statement saying that it was going to increase the price of its products by between 9 and whatever %. And subsequent to KISS on making that announcement, NFM actually said it was going to cut back on some of the price increases, not on all the products, but on some of the products, after an intervention by the Minister of Trade. So we said, let us focus on KISS, because other bakeries have not yet announced any price increase. They may, but KISS, which is the biggest baking company in the country, has a very significant market share, and is not owned by small people. It's Bermudez and a few other big shareholders own KISS. So we said, you know what, let us call on people to boycott KISS bread, because that is a simple thing that we could demonstrate as consumers, that we have some power to force a company to revisit its position. Now, whether they withdraw the price increase completely or whether they say, okay, instead of 9%, they're going to bring it down, whatever it is, we could win a victory by acting together, and ensuring that we take action, because change can only come about by taking action. So that is the simple campaign. And when Fabiola, when we did this as Phyton way back when, it was no social
Sorry, David, you're breaking up.
Media. There was no social media in those days, right?
Oh, right. So when you did it in Phyton, there was no social media.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's right. So it was a physical going outside supermarkets, going to the market, giving out flyers, distributing flyers. At the workplace, we printed, I don't know, 20, 30, 40,000 flyers.
Wow.
And on the back of each flyer, we had recipes, because Hazel Brown, when we had the first thing, Don't Buy Bread, said, well, David, you can't just tell people don't buy bread. Tell people to bake their own bread or make their own roti. And Google wasn't that popular in those days, if at all, right? So we put, when we said don't buy KISS, we put on the back of the flyer recipes of how people could bake their own bread, make roti, and so on. But this time around, with social media, this is going to be a social media campaign. Okay. And so in about a day's time, we will put up our flyer on Facebook and Instagram. And then we will have, in the following days, many other pieces of information being shared on social media. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we already have people commenting and in the Facebook. Do you want me to play the video and then we could take more questions from the audience?
Sure, that would be great.
Okay, so.
Fabio, is there a problem with the volume?
Is that better?
Yes. I think it's gone again. There's a volume problem, an audio problem. Yes.
Okay, so let's just try again from the beginning. And if anyone on Facebook who's hearing or having problems, let us know how it's sounding to you, please.
Yes, people are saying on Facebook that they're not hearing, unfortunately.
Okay.
Yes, I think we're having a problem, Fabiola. I'm not sure if I can go.
Okay. Yeah, the original recording had some audio quality issues, so I guess I didn't do a very good job of cleaning it up. I apologize, comrades.
That's all right.
So let's go to the audience then and get our questions. Let me pull up Facebook. So Tokoniki says they remember the similar action with Phyton just before Christmas.
Yes, Nicole was part of Phyton, was very active in Phyton. Of course, Trinidad Youth Council was a member of Phyton at the time. So we had a number of young people involved in the campaign, which was really good. And,
okay.
and Nicole Hendrickson, Tokoniki was one of those, yes.
Okay. And Wayne says, a pleasant good night to all and best to MSJ. Purnell says, besides boycotting, we have to take to the streets, people yearning for a good old protest. Well, the campaign was more than just the boycott, right? So are we going to see anything like in-person protest?
Well, we haven't decided on that yet. The executive is going to meet, the MSJ executive is meeting this coming weekend, and then we will discuss what other forms the campaign will take. Now, when I made the announcement on Sunday, one of the things that we said is that instead of buying KISS bread, persons could buy from their community bakeries. In other words, part of the MSJ's policy is economic policies for the social economy. And the social economy means support for small micro businesses, cooperatives, and so on. So if we support our community bakery, then that's one way of ensuring that our hard-earned dollars, which we have to stretch so much more because of prices going up and salaries and wages have not gone up for almost 10 years now. Mm-hmm. Let us spend those dollars, precious dollars and cents that we have in a community with a community bakery and support small business. So that's one alternative to buying KISS. Secondly, we can make our own bread, those who are into making bread and so on. And we will be, as part of the social media campaign, putting up links for you all in terms of recipes for roti, and whether it's sada roti or basab shot or whatever, and also fry bake, roast bake bread. And so we'll be putting up those recipes so people can do things at home on their own. And that is one way in which you could save dollars, because even though the price of flour has gone up, you can stretch flour into much more than one loaf of bread if you do it yourself. So that's one way of helping people to manage their budget. And then we made a call on the government, which we'll repeat, for them to provide support for the national flour mills, because the government is the single largest shareholder in NFM, and it can provide support for national flour mills to ensure that flour mills does not increase the price of flour and therefore go back to the old prices. And this we view as short-term support, not that subsidy, if you wish, on flour should exist for all times, because what we need to do is have it as a short-term measure to take the pressure off of people at this point in time during pandemic, while tens of thousands of people have lost their job, haven't got back a job. Thousands of people applied for salary relief grant, never got the grant yet, and so on. So there are lots of people who are suffering, who are in pain. So let us ease that pain by supporting flour mills, Mr. Government, Dr. Rowley, Prime Minister, support National Flour Mills, Finance Minister, Mr. Imbert, Trade Minister, Paula Gopi-Schoon, support flour mills so that for a year, for 2022, people could get an ease and so on, so that the pressure, the burden does not fall on the backs of ordinary people. Now, the third element of what we are saying is that we need to break the dependence. This is a classic example of how dependent we are on the importation of food, in particular wheat. But flour can be made by other things, not just wheat. And this is not new technology. Long before you were born, Fabiola, in 19.
I'm not that young anymore, so
no, I'm talking about.
This is a while back, right?
I'm talking about when I was a student at UWI, 1972, 73. So that is long before you were born, trust me. 1972, 73. Professor George Sammy was head of food technology at UWI's Faculty of Engineering. And he and his family lived on campus in one of the bungalows, for those who are familiar with UWI, which is very near to where the principal's office is. Now houses one of the other offices, either security office or the deputy principal or something like that. So Professor Sammy lived in one of those houses. So I was walking on campus one day, and of course we had a good rapport with Professor Sammy, because Birdsong Panyard was in Dagger Hall, which was very close by. And so, Dr. Roy Thomas, Professor Sammy were the residents very close to the Panyard. So we had to have a good rapport and relationship with our neighbors. And Professor Sammy was a very progressive person in any case. So he stopped me and said, David, come out. I wanted to taste something. My wife just made something. And she had made some bread. So he offered me some bread, and I can't remember what we had with it. He said, "Oh, this tasting." I said, "It's tasting great, Please congratulate Mrs. Sammy on her on her making of bread." He said, "But you know what is in this bread?" I said, "Well, flour." He said, "Yeah, but what kind of flour?" I said, "Well, wheat." He said, "No, David, this is a composite flour with cassava, yam, and some other things. I don't remember all the composites." So 50 years ago, 1972 to now, 50 years ago, Professor Sammy had developed composite flour using our root crops. And not only that, but those composite flours are healthier than wheat flour because complex carbohydrates, yam, dasheen, sweet potato, stuff like that, cassava and so on, complex carbohydrates are less likely to give you diabetes, hypertension, and cholesterol, high cholesterol. So it is healthier, and then we could support our local farmers, cut down the food import bill, and we could then manage the price of flour and not be dependent.
And some people also have issues with gluten, which is very high in wheat, and some people might actually do a lot better on these alternative flours.
They would, because yam and dasheen and breadfruits, as far as I know, don't have gluten at all. So I don't think, or very little.
Can I share a comment from the audience?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this is Comrade Empress. Hi, how are you doing? So glad to see you with us again. She says, small businesses are owned by real people. It's not something abstract. Why not get the names of some of the small businesses who wish to be a part of this initiative and advertise more than recipes? We can also share names and locations so people can go support these places when we're out and about. We can share on MSJ pages and share.
Excellent proposal, excellent idea. So that is agreed one time, Empress, Madeline. Excellent idea. So what we would like to do, because obviously at a central level, we would know all of the community bakeries. So what I would ask our MSJ colleagues, and I see Sherbert Maki from Diego Martin is on, and we have other people on this evening as well. And so and we will put something in the MSJ activist chat to ask all the regions to identify bakeries in their communities that we could support, and that we would then publicize those. And we would hope that those bakeries then don't increase the price of their products. Yes, but that's an excellent idea, and we will implement that. Yeah.
Okay, so the campaign is the boycott of KISS, asking the government to support NFM because they're the major shareholders, to try to encourage more local production of alternative flours. And also now we're asking MSJ activists to suggest the small businesses that we will support going forward.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
And just about 3 kilometers from where I live, there's a huge warehouse. I don't know if it's still, still existing in terms of the plant and equipment. In that warehouse, just off the Freeport Mission Road, near where Sasha Cosmetics and Unipet are located, there's an organization called TABA, Trinidad Agro-Business Association. And they had developed plant and equipment to process cassava into cassava fries and freeze it, sweet potatoes for sweet potato fries and freeze it, to then supply to fast food chains. So instead of potato fries, whether reconstituted potato or real potato fries, we could get sweet potato and cassava fries, and to produce flour, composite flour. And that plant, millions of dollars were invested, and that's just lying idle. It's terrible.
I feel that somebody or some people are doing frozen fries though, because I know that I've seen cassava fries and sweet potato fries locally produced.
There are some locally produced, and there are also some that get imported, particularly cassava from Dominican Republic and elsewhere, maybe Costa Rica as well. But there's no reason why we couldn't wrap that up. And I noticed recently in the media that there's a root crop, I think, farmers association that we should make contact with, because they want to increase their output. And so these proposals link with increasing their output and giving them a guaranteed market as well. So there are things that we can do. So this is an opportunity to do something very different, and MSJ is leading the way on this issue.
Okay. Comrade Ozzy Warwick says the social economy is the future for our country. I think you mentioned that earlier, the social economy. Could you explain more what that means, please?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure what it means.
Yes. So the ILO, International Labour Organization, calls it social solidarity economy. We simply call it social economy. I was developed in Canada about 25, 30 years ago. And one of the main people who initiated it actually came to Trinidad and Tobago a couple of years ago, and we hosted her in a seminar talking about the social economy. What it really is to link cooperative capital, like credit unions, to finance the small micro businesses, which may be individually owned or maybe cooperative owned. So, for example, it emerged in Montreal when workers were being laid off about 30 years ago, in the same way that a lot of workers have been retrenched here in Trinidad and Tobago. What then happened was that some of the workers got together and formed a cooperative, went to the credit unions. The credit unions gave them a loan with little collateral, and that cooperative was then able to start a business. It could be a catering business, it could be an agricultural cooperative, it could be a daycare center business, it could be a small business doing construction or maintenance work, and so on. That's one element of the social economy. MSJ has proposed, for example, converting CPEP from having individual contractors, and every time the government changes, the contractors get fired because the contractors are always aligned to the party in power.
Right.
And instead of that, having the workers take over the contracts and own the business as a cooperative. So the workers form a cooperative. So they're not simply employees going to work hired by a contractor who is paid by the CPEP company, but the CPEP company now hires a cooperative which is owned by the workers. And then the workers now, in addition to doing the grass cutting and that kind of thing, can now be trained to do higher level skills like plumbing, electrical work, masonry, and so on. And they could then be engaged in maintaining community facilities like the recreation grounds, like the health centers and other, maybe some of the schools. So you get now those community-based cooperatives doing work in the communities, maintaining the community facilities. So they feel a sense of ownership of the community facilities. So it's not the government owned, not the village council owned, it is the community's own. And so after they get established doing that level of maintenance work, they could then bid for bigger contracts, subcontracting to state enterprises and so on. So that's all part of the social economy. And doing work, for example, for development of infrastructure, of improving drainage and other things like that. And so capital now flows into the hands of small people and not only into the hands of big conglomerates like Bermudez, which owns KISS. And as I mentioned that, I saw that Carib has now decided to increase the price of beer. Yes, but do you know that Carib, of course, is part of the Ansa McAl conglomerate? And for the first 6 months of 2021, because they haven't declared full year results yet, for the first 6 months of 2021, Ansa McAl Group after-tax profit went up by over 120%. After-tax profit, or by over 120% in the first 6 months of 2021. I don't have the figures in front of me. I read it out in the press conference on Sunday. Right. I think it was from 460 to $670 million, or an increase of $127 million, or it went up after tax profit. So why does Carib increase the price of beer by $1? Let Ansa McAl absorb some of the costs, so they reduce their profit, so that 1% set of people will not, they don't even have to tighten the belt, they just earn a little less profit. Yeah, but that is what that is why we say that the controllers of the economy are a main cause of the problems that we have. And the other cause of the problems that we have are the political controllers, and the economic controllers of power and the political controllers of power are interlocked. Yes, because the economic controllers of power finance the parties that become the political controllers of power. And so they're interlocked. And for us to get a change to solve the problems that we have to break that relationship between the economic controllers of power and the political controllers of power. And it's only MSA who's prepared to do that. But I've digressed from the social economy, Fabiola. My apologies.
Well, I guess it was connected because I was following, and I guess the audience was following too. I'm wondering about our dependence on imports. If you could tell us a little bit more about that, please.
Yeah, sure. This is based on what we call the plantation economy, where we were established as a colony, Trinidad, and before Trinidad, of course, Tobago, and before Barbados and the others, Jamaica, Haiti, and so on, even long before Trinidad. But we were established to produce sugar, and all of that sugar was exported to Europe. To France, it was a French colony, to Spain, if it was a Spanish colony, to England, if it was a English colony, to Holland, if it was a Dutch colony. So we produced sugar. And everything else then had to be imported into the colony for the plantation, whether it was equipment for the sugar mill, whether it was clothing for the plantation owner, the slave owner, or clothing for the slave, little bit of clothes for the slave, whether it was things like salted fish and so on. Those things had to be imported. So we developed a economic structure where we produce primarily one or two items for export, and then with the foreign exchange that we earn from those, we then buy everything else. So in the case of Trinidad, cocoa replaced sugar for a short period of time, and then of course oil, and then gas and petrochemicals replace cocoa. And we get foreign exchange from our oil and our gas and our petrochemicals and so on. And we use that foreign exchange now to buy the tablets that we are and laptops that we are using, and the phones, to buy the flour, to buy the salt fish, even though we could make salted fish here using locally caught fish and so on. We import, tomato paste for tomato ketchup and everything else. All of the other food items we import. And we do not support our local farmers, so we import local chicken, that is frozen chicken that might have been stored in some cold storage for 2 years in the United States and then brought into Trinidad, and it's unhealthy, but people buy it because it might be cheaper and so on. And we buy all kinds of other stuff. And so that is what happens in terms of our high import bill. It's a historical thing. And historically, there have been firms that have gotten rich and individuals that have gotten rich by importing. And so what do? They buy cheap abroad and they put a markup on and they sell there and they make a profit. So we have these middlemen or middle people, if you wish, middle persons, who are the import merchants. And whether it is a motor car that they're bringing in, or whether it is food that they're bringing in, or whether it is technological equipment that they're bringing in, that's what they do. And they survive based on that. And they're not interested in producing anything. Yes? And so we need to now support producers of local products coming out of our own resources.
Okay, so we have another question from Comrade Hart.
Yes.
Do you think that producing flour from other sources can improve relations in CARICOM? For example, purchasing ground provisions grown in St. Vincent as opposed to wheat from Canada?
Yeah, sure. In other words, we need to support, of course, our own farmers to maximize root crop production here in Trinidad and Tobago, because Tobago has huge potential, which has not been utilized from the 1960s after Hurricane Flora. Agriculture virtually disappeared from Tobago. So we can produce a lot more, but we also can import, whether it is up from the islands. Breadfruit, for example, it will take quite some time for us to get a significant amount of breadfruit grown locally in Trinidad today. We may not be able to do that, but St. Vincent produces a hell of a lot of breadfruit. So it might make sense to buy breadfruit from St. Vincent. But we also have to link with Guyana and Belize, because Guyana and Belize have vast amounts of land. I mean, Guyana is bigger than England, right? But Guyana only has less than 800,000 people. Guyana has less people than Trinidad today. But the size of Guyana is bigger than England. There's an island in a river in Guyana. And that island is bigger than the island of Barbados. So Barbados could fit into a river that is Guyana, a Guyanese river. So when we talk about a river, like Caroni is a big river, that is joke, right? A big Guyanese river, you fit Barbados in that, okay, and have space around it. So we could develop, which had been talked about from Eric Williams' days. Eric Williams and Dr. Williams as Prime Minister, and Michael Manley and Forbes Burnham and others. Errol Barrow set up a Caribbean Food and Agricultural Corporation, and it was being funded by Trinidad petrodollars. never went anywhere. So MSJ called since 2020, March, when we first started talking about recovery and in our roadmap for recovery, we said, let us get a CARICOM food production activity going as a matter of priority. 2 years have come around and nothing has happened.
Wow. So Comrade Carter says, that's nonsense and wonder why people getting sick. I think that was said when we were talking about the importation habits and the quality of meat that we might be getting. And Nikki says, and the food import bill has implications for our NCD rates. Is that non-communicable diseases? If I'm wrong, please let me know.
That's correct, yes.
So the food import bill has implications for NCD rates, which then has connections to COVID-19 if we are to follow the information that was coming out of very early.
Agreed, yes. In other words, persons who are obese, who have diabetes, hypertension, and heart disease are more likely, if they get COVID, not to do well, okay? And the risk of getting very ill or dying is much higher. So diet is very, very important. And therefore, eating right is critical, which is also why we advocated 2 years ago that the government should not shut down the school feeding program.
Right.
Because it's important to get children eating healthy food and having an appreciation of local food. So instead of them craving fast food and greasy food and drinking a lot of sweet drink and that kind of thing, it is better for them to eat ground provision, fresh vegetables, and meat that is grown, developed from animals that are grown locally. So if we have the school feeding program going, then farmers could continue to get sale for their produce. The caterers who produce the meals, which are small business, that's a social economy, they would be working. The people they hire would be working, and then children could get meals, and therefore pressure could be taken off the parents in terms of the little bit of money they have, because they haven't gotten an increase in pay for 10 years and prices going up for everything, transport, everything going up. The parents could then know that their children could get 2 meals, breakfast and lunch, because the children are not in school. Yeah. And we said, don't shut down the school feeding program. But this government doesn't have much sense. I have to be polite because, we like to be in MSJ polite in terms of our language. So they don't have sense, right? They don't make the right decisions. They rather give out a food card, which makes people dependent on the MP who gives you the food card, than having the school feeding program continuing, which means farmers are supported, school feeding companies are supported, the workers employed there get work, taxi drivers could get work, or people in the community to transport the food from the caterer to the community center, the school, so that the food could be collected by the parent or by the children themselves, and so on, or dropped to their homes if necessary, and children could eat decently, and so on, and they could have tastes which are for local food, and they will be healthier and everything like that. Because everything is connected, is a cycle.
Yeah, it ties into like the social economy, like the school feeding program is just one more piece of that whole cycle.
Yes, and we, for example, said that one of the things that could be done with large companies downtown could come together and provide subsidized meals for their workers who have not gotten a pay increase for a long time. So subsidize their meals, and therefore have new companies now maybe little cooperatives with some workers who lost their jobs could set up a little cooperative and get funding from the credit union to provide those meals, which then get subsidized by the employer so that workers could get a good meal at work. And create daycare centers for those workers so that children who are being not supervised at home could be in a daycare facility as well. All of that is the social economy.
And we have seen that care for children has been very important because there have been a few accidents and tragedies since the schools were closed.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So, so all of that is a social economy, but we're going to start to help the social economy with the Boycott Kiss campaign. And we will, support our community bakeries, and we will do our own thing by making our own products at home. And, we want people to be really part of this campaign. Let us begin to change. This is part of the revolution of the mind,
Okay.
And MSJ talks about the revolution of the mind. So we want to make the revolution of the mind step by step, perhaps, because it sometimes a revolution doesn't happen in one big go all at one time. It goes step by step until people say, all right, we're ready for the big step now. Yes. So let's have a revolution of the mind and change how we act, because how I always tell our MSJ colleagues, sisters and brothers, that how you think is how you act. So if you think about supporting local, then that changes a lot of things about how you act and so on. And therefore you can build the social economy in this very concrete way. And that's part of the revolution of the mind. Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if there are any other questions. I know that we were going to rebroadcast the statement I made for New Year. So what I would invite those who have joined us is to go back on you're on the MSJ page now. So simply scroll down and look for that press conference that we had on Sunday and share it 25 times. Share it plenty. Share it to your friends and then share it individually to 25 friends, right? And let's make that statement go viral. Yeah. Okay. Instead of rebroadcasting tonight, because I think this conversation, Fabiola, has been, very focused in of itself, and to come down with another broadcast where the audio might be a little dodgy would make much sense. Yeah. So we could just get people to, after this finishes, to go and listen to it again, share it to all your friends again.
That's the video from Sunday morning, right?
From Sunday morning, yes. Okay. Right, which is just a couple posts lower down from this live tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you for a very insightful conversation. Thank you to our comrades for participating via Facebook.
I don't know if there are any other questions. Were there any other questions before we end?
We just had comments that it makes sense. It could turn into trillions. This is from Comrade Carter, and the suggestion that we do the homework, because this will add up. This could really make things happen.
Yeah.
So.
But activism means that all of us have to be active. Yes.
Okay. So from tomorrow, we're going to go to our local bakeries and support them.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. All right. Once again, thank you, comrades, and all the best for the new year. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Fabiola, for moderating.
Good night.
And thanks, everyone, for joining. Be safe.